Today's Becoming a Reflective Teacher trait is: what do I typically do to establish and maintain classroom rules and procedures? That is the element number 4 from your Marzano Becoming a Reflective Teacher traits. The objective statement is that the teacher reviews expectations regarding rules and procedures to ensure their effective execution. Teacher evidence of that is that, 1, the teacher might involve students in designing classroom routines. My students in the middle school setting were always involved in establishing who was going to perform which task and how that task would be completed each day in the classroom setting. 2, the teacher uses classroom meetings to review and process rules and procedures. In the middle school setting, again, in which I taught, we had the opportunity to stop everything if we needed to and have a discussion about the progress that students were making in their particular progress in following the classroom rules and procedures as they were established. And it was just a chance to regroup. A teacher reminds students of rules and procedures. If you have your rules and procedures firmly established in the beginning of your semester or your school year, then it's easy for you to be able to say, Joe, please remind me again of what the procedure is for sharpening pencils. Joe, please remind the class again of what the procedure is for turning in papers. So it's a reminder, not chastising your students. The teacher might ask students to restate or explain rules and procedures, which is just what I asked Joe to do. You also can sometimes offer extra credit opportunities for that if you'd like for them to have a quiet written task time regarding your rules and procedures while you are cooling down from a frustrating moment with them regarding a particular rule or procedure. Teacher might provide cues or signals when a rule or procedure should be used. One of the particular rules that I had involved, sit down unless you have a purpose for being elsewhere. So we always discussed all of those purposes at the start of a semester, along with role playing them, and that made it much easier for me to, when things were not going well, to be able to say, okay, Charlie's rule, for example. What do you think Charlie's rule was? Well, I had a particular student I was able to tell the story about who really had a hard time staying in his seat, and he just wanted to wander around the room. So I eventually decided that, all right, let's use this as a way to draw attention to the fact that he didn't really want the attention placed on him. He just couldn't sit still, but I needed other students to help him sit down as well as be seated themselves. So whenever he would get to wandering, the kids knew, Charlie's rule, and he would be reminded to sit down. And then, as well as if another student chose to wander, it was much more fun to say, Charlie's rule, and everybody knew that meant go to your seat, rather than saying, please be seated, sit down, or flipping the lights, because those weren't effective tools. I also utilized something called a classroom covenant. And when the students were finding that they didn't feel as safe in the classroom because of their behavior as this behavior of other students impacted them, and they felt like maybe there were some negative comments being made, some maybe bullying occurring, we sat down together, had a classroom meeting, and said, what are the standards by which we want to live in this classroom? Because we lived and worked together so much in a separate special education classroom that we really needed to function as a family and have some ground rules that responded to what was making them not feel safe or feel as cared for. So we created a classroom covenant, and they all contributed to it. We narrowed it down to a list that we wanted to have posted, and then the students all signed off on it, and we maintained that throughout the year. We were able to say if someone wasn't being kind to another person, we'd say, look, Rule 12 that you created for yourself says be kind to one another, and you're not being kind right now. So the covenant was a great way to say you participated in the creation of that, and they respected that much more than me just saying you're being mean. And the other most important thing for this particular design question and element is that at the start of your school year, you have to ensure that you have taught your procedures and rules effectively and role played them with students so they understand what examples and non-examples of those are, because they may or may not have seen the appropriate behavior in every class they'd been in the past. So it's important that you role play so again you can bring to life those role plays in the future when you need to remind students of procedures. Just much less threatening. Evidence that students are in a classroom where the teacher has followed this particular element's rules. So what do I typically do to establish and maintain classroom rules and procedures? Might be students are following clear routines during class. You're not having to prompt students frequently to, put your pencil down, put your hand down. No, don't get up right now. You would have practiced them and role played those. And students can describe those established rules and procedures when asked. So when you walk into a classroom, even as a substitute teacher, you should be able to ask, students, what do you do if you need to go to the restroom? What do you do if you need to sharpen your pencil? And they should be able to clearly articulate that. When asked, students are actually going to describe a classroom where this is done as an orderly place. They're going to say, it's safe in here. I feel like I can get my work done. I know what to expect. I know what to do next. I know what comes next. No one bothers me. We have fun, but it's always safe. Safety being a word that you will hear frequently. Students recognize cues and signals from the teacher. So perhaps as a pre-service teacher, you walk into a classroom where this has been done well, and that teacher can say to you, this is how we get their attention. This is how we ask them to be seated. This is how they know that there is an emergency coming. And they show you signals or give you phrases or cues that you can use with those students, and the students do them for you just as well as they would for the teacher. And students regulate their own behavior in classrooms such as this. A lot of times, even with our classroom covenant, I might never know until 3 or 4 days later that a student was not following those classroom covenant rules, and that was because students were able to keep one another in check and keep their own behavior in check because everyone in the room knew exactly what the expectations were for behavior and for procedures. So in rating yourself, you will need to determine in this particular situation how your classroom teacher handles this particular element, because you do not yet have the experience to develop all of these and it's not your own classroom yet. So in your goal writing this week, it's more so what you're going to be looking specifically for in this classroom setting. So what are you going to be looking for that is teacher evidence and student evidence of this particular element being performed well? The element again is, what do I typically do to establish and maintain classroom rules and procedures? Thank you.